Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is Bedo Demirdjian. He is the PR and Communications Director of the European Armenian Federation for Justice and Democracy, a Brussels-based lobby group. Bedo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
You were here taking part in the Euronest, the fourth ordinary session of the Euronest Parliamentary
Assembly.
All the names are very long, these European names.
Well, this is Europe. We have 28 countries and 7 political groups, so they have to be fitting for all.
That's right. So this was the second time that Euronest was holding its meetings in Armenia. These meetings were interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, there was a document that was passed regarding the Armenian Genocide.
Yes.
And we were informed that we should look forward to another one on April 15th by the European Parliament. The Commissioner for Enlargement said that during the meeting. What will this give to the Armenian cause, this document? It's 2015, 100th anniversary. We're seeing a lot of initiatives being taken place by parliaments, cities, states, and provinces. Euronest document on the Armenian genocide. What is it going to give us?
Well, yes. First of all, this was the fourth ordinary session of the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly. The first one was a committee meeting 2 years ago. It was in 2013, February. It was one committee meeting, which was co-chaired by Artak Zakarian. This is why it was held here in Yerevan, who, by the way, Artak Zakarian currently is the head of the Armenian delegation to the Euronest and member of the bureau of the Euronest, which is a rotating position. Anyhow. The resolution on the centennial of the Armenian genocide, this is how the resolution is called. If we take it chronologically, is the third such resolution in less than a month in Europe or coming from Europe. The difference of the Euronest from the other resolutions and the report is that this is a document signed by the European Union Parliament and the delegate countries, the 6 countries of the Euronest, which are Belarus, Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan had boycotted the whole session. Belarus is frozen from the Euronest. And we had the Moldovan, Georgian, Ukrainian, and Armenian delegations here in Yerevan these last 3 days. So this is a bilateral or multilateral document signed in Yerevan on this centennial year here in the Armenian National Assembly by the European Parliament and by these European Eastern neighbor countries, which gives a different value and meaning to the whole resolution. And I must say that this was a resolution jointly agreed by all parties, and which explicitly calls on Turkey to recognize its past and reconcile with its history and the historical truth, which we of course welcome, and it's more symbolic, but it has its meaning as well. I mean, it's a resolution, yes, it's non-binding, but anyhow it has a meaning. And of course the Turkish Foreign Ministry immediately they had a reaction that this is as they usually do.
Sure, it's expected. Yes. I want to
and let me just mention that the first resolution last month was the European People's Party's political assemblies, which is much more stronger than what we had yesterday. And the second one that I mentioned is the report on human rights of the European Parliament, where that report calls on the EU 28 member countries to recognize, and it calls on the European institutions as well to make everything possible for more further recognition of the Armenian genocide.
Right, and that document also took note of the fact that the Armenian communities in the Middle East today have become very vulnerable as Christian minorities, religious minorities. So it was an important document, and we should look forward to the April 15 one too.
Yes, April 15th, it's already on the agenda, on the mini plenary session of the European Parliament in Brussels.
Do you expect to have any kind of opposition from any of the members?
it could happen. It's a resolution. We have 7 political groups in the European Parliament, and there could be negotiations on different paragraphs, on different wordings. It could happen, which I assume will happen. But the general mood is that it will be voted for. And it will be voted reaffirming the 1987 European Union Parliament resolution on the Armenian question, on the Armenian genocide, reaffirming all past resolutions in the Turkey yearly reports or the Commission reports, and having a special meaning in this centennial year. And we might have statements from the European Commission and the Council as well on the centennial. So we're looking forward to it. We're hopeful that all major players, especially the main political parties, will agree, and we will have yet another resolution from the European Parliament by all 28 member states. And it shall be mentioned that the European Parliament is the only EU institution which is voted for. It's voted from all member states in Europe, so it's somehow different from the Council and the Commission. So
sure, it carries a little bit more weight in that sense, absolutely, because their own citizens have voted them.
Exactly.
Voted them into the Parliament.
Exactly.
Okay, I want to ask a question. I'm going to try and be brief in the question, but it might, we might extend it a little bit. It's a two-pronged question here. First of all, you are in Brussels. You are a lobby group, an Armenian lobby group, working in one of the power centers of the world.
Yes.
Huh? You're having to contend with Azerbaijani and Turkish lobby groups, governments that have many more resources, instruments, tools in their hands than the Armenians do. I was talking to one of your colleagues, European Friends of Armenia, and he was saying that in reality there's so few of us there, and there was 14 Azerbaijani lobby groups, and not with 3 member staff, so with a much larger staff. The question might sound naive, but how is it that? How do you wake up every morning and realize that this is the challenge you have ahead of you, to protect Armenia's interests, whether it's resolutions on genocide or the recognition of Nagorno-Karabakh or security for Armenia or democracy development in the country? How do you do it?
I don't know. Or we don't wake up at all and just
keep
go on working. Yes. Brussels could be considered one of the main political capitals in the world. And it could be something like the Washington, D.C. or Moscow and Brussels, if we take these 3 major political entities. And yes, as you said, we know of 14 different NGOs or affiliated organizations towards Azerbaijan. But let me stress the fact that Azerbaijan and Turkey work closely with each other. So actually, they are one and the same. And it could be very simplistic, but somehow Turkey has exported its Armenian question to the Azerbaijanis, to Azerbaijan. And we can feel this.
Just as an example, April 24th commemorations that take place all around the world. Take Ottawa, for example. For years, the Armenian community has been going and demonstrating in front of Parliament Hill, and never had there been a counter. Now the counter demonstration is not by Turks, but it's by Azerbaijanis on April 24th.
Exactly.
A very interesting development for us here.
Exactly. I mean, this is what we see in Brussels as well. Unfortunately, I would like to mention one thing here. Since we are in Yerevan, we knew that Azerbaijan had boycotted the Euronest session. It was on Friday or Saturday. I was in Yerevan, so it must have been Saturday evening or night. I read in the news that the Turkish parliament has somehow asked or convinced the Azerbaijani parliament to lift the embargo and come to Yerevan to try and disrupt this resolution which was voted for yesterday. March 18th, in the Euronest. This was not true, of course, and unfortunately, we, the Armenian media, played into that. But this was not the case. But what I want to mention is that there is a truth in having the Turkish and Azerbaijani governments work together. Or let's not forget the anti-Armenian demonstrations in Turkey. The signs, the banners by Azerbaijan, of course, or by Azerbaijanis. Right. And coming back to Brussels, we have these two powers or countries, states, working against us, against two Armenian NGOs, the European Armenian Federation and the European Friends of Armenia, which you mentioned, and of course the embassy. So this is what we are against. Right. But I want to stress one very interesting fact. In the European Parliament, there are different friendship groups with the whole world. Because in May 2014, we had the new elections of the European Parliament, so we had to relaunch the friendship group of the European Parliament with Armenia. The launching was in early February, 4th or 5th February. So we have now in the European Parliament 57 members of the European Parliament, members of this group, with the Armenian group.
And is that compared to other?
Exactly.
Okay.
This is where I want to go.
Okay.
Now. Regarding the Azerbaijani friendship group, since this is our discussion topics, there was an attempt to form a group. We don't know what has happened. It's secretive. We hear that there are 12 or 13 members of the European Parliament in the Azerbaijani group. We don't know of them. So this makes us, or this can answer your question as to how we cope with this. Well, it's either no one is willing to become a member of this group because of obvious Azerbaijani reasons, the regime, the dictatorship, Aliyev's, the human rights and everything. And or they don't want to be named as Azerbaijani friends or stigmatized.
But they might be doing their activities sort of under the radar.
It could be. And why? Because in the presidential elections in Azerbaijan, of which the results were released one day before the elections,
we know,
with the telephone app. It's
yeah.
tragicomic. Anyhow, 12 members of the European Parliament, in their own capacity, went to Azerbaijan. They had their as an observation mission, and they had their report like we're talking about Switzerland and Norway combined.
Right.
Which were, by the way, these MEPs were called by the European Parliament's Ethical Committee.
Right, we reported about it, certainly.
Yes, yeah, so these shouldn't be gone unnoticed. I mean, so this would give your answers a reply as to how we try to cope it. I mean, it's different. I want to mention, though, that yes, we know very well, that Armenia's current democracy is not in the levels that we would like it to be, but it's no way compared to Azerbaijan, of course.
So certainly it isn't. Just a final question. It's something that we here in Armenia have been dealing with. In September 2013, Armenia's president Serge Sarkisyan, during a trip to Moscow, decided very abruptly to change the foreign policy track of his country. We had been in negotiations for years for the association agreement, and now all of a sudden we find ourselves, as of January 2015, a full member of the Eurasian Economic Union. And for those of us in the media, for those in civil society in Armenia, we were seriously concerned that Europe might disengage, and this would have had catastrophic impact in the long run, because there would be no oversight for democracy development, good governance, transparency, human rights, and all of the issues that that we can assume would happen. But now we see there is a desire on behalf of Europe to engage with Armenia, and we hope also by Armenia to engage with Europe. But that decision, how much more difficult did it make your job? And how do we move beyond declarative statements, as the Commissioner for Enlargement had here in Yerevan? They sounded really great, but how do we move that into action?
Yeah, at the beginning, in September, especially of 2013, we were doing damage control or crisis management. I mean, that was a sort of our activities. I would like to give a real example of what was going on. September is right after August, of course, where the whole of Europe is in vacation and everyone gets back to work. And I met in the European Parliament, in the corridors, I met one of the political advisors of a political group in the European Parliament. He saw me, we congratulated each other, we welcomed each other. He said, "Hey, what are you doing here? You should be in Moscow." Oh. So this was the first days after the September 3rd decision. It was the first time I was seeing him after the decision as well and after the vacations. So this was a real talk. And I was like, okay, I mean, is this how easily you just get rid of us? Yeah. You give up? And the next month, in October, there was a report from the European Parliament, the report on European neighborhood policy in 2013, October, yeah. And the European Parliament, they were looking somehow to punish, if I may say so, yeah, Armenia. And our organization worked hard to try to explain what really has happened or what was the reason behind this whole turnover. Because yes, there were 3 years of negotiations, everything was ready to be signed and ratified, and then we stopped it, yes. But they didn't believe us. Unfortunately, the same year, in 2013, November, after 2 months approximately, we had the case of Ukraine. Right. And this is when the European Union really understood what we were saying or what we were trying to say.
That the EMP countries have their own specific needs, interests, and you cannot discount Russia in your negotiations. Exactly. So we have the European Union, we have the Russian Federation, and we have these 6 countries in between, from Belarus to Azerbaijan, with different priorities, different democratic values, security issues. Absolutely, yeah. And now just think, and we were saying this yesterday, that we have 6 members of the Euronest, from the eastern countries, of course. We have Belarus, which is out of the equation for the time being, it's frozen. So we have Moldova with the Transnistria problem. We have Ukraine now with its huge problems, the east, the west, the Crimea, this and that. We have Georgia, we already know South Ossetia, Abkhazia. 2008, sure. Yes, and we have Armenia. We are Armenia and Azerbaijan, and we have the conflict, the frozen or not so frozen conflict of Nagorno-Karabakh. And these 6 countries are between the European Union and the Russian Federation, and we know that things will change if, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but that's the reality. The European Union and the Russian Federation, if they do not come to terms, the neighborhood will be... the neighborhood is the one who will suffer. Exactly. Yeah, yes, exactly. And I got that sense from Commissioner Hahn's speech yesterday in Parliament here, when he said that we understand that each country in the EMP has specific interests, needs, and security needs that Armenia certainly has. The new commissioner of the European Union, the president of the Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, he has said already that in his term, he will be, or the Commission will be looking further into the European neighborhood policy, taking each country separately. And we had the announcement last week. And we, as the European Federation, we will be taking part in these consultations as well, as to how we see the neighborhood. But it will be a tailor-made policy for each country, specific country. It was good seeing Commissioner Hahn, Johannes Hahn, in Yerevan, in the Armenian, the National Assembly. It looks like the European Union is comprehending what the real issues are, and they are trying to accommodate, because the European Union does not want to lose the neighborhood. The neighborhood countries separately have their own issues, yes, but they want to be part, both, if not only one, both the Russian Federation
or the Eurasian Economic Union and the European Union and the West generally.
Right.
So
hopefully Europe will move beyond political tourism to the EMP countries, and the EMP countries will show the political will to engage in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Bedo, I just wanted to thank you. Wanted to wrap up and thank you for this. It was a really fascinating conversation and interview, and certainly understanding the huge challenge that you have in Europe. So
thank you and good luck.
Thanks. I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was Bedo Demirdjian. He is from the European Armenian Federation for Justice and Democracy, a Brussels-based lobby group. Stay with CivilNet.